Gentlemen, do I understand that you're yielding to Senator Duckworth? Is that correct? Both of you? Senator Van Hollen? Are you going to yield to Senator Duckworth? Okay. Senator Duckworth.
I thank my colleagues. My daughter has dental surgery, so they're being very kind so I can get her to that. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, last March, the President invoked the Alien Enemies Act, a notorious wartime law last used for Japanese internment. He said that he was responding to the Maduro regime's supposed invasion or other acts of war against the United States. But in recent weeks, you, the Department of Justice, and our friends across the aisle have repeatedly said that we are not at war with Venezuela. Secretary Rubio, if that is true and we are not at war with Venezuela, will you advise the President to rescind his invocation of the Wartime Alien Enemies Act?
Well, that was a mechanism to remove people from our country that prevent grave danger. So, for example, we know for a fact that Trinidad Agua is a very dangerous gang. In fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I may have been the first member of Congress.
This is a wartime act, Mr. Secretary.
Well,
are we currently at war with Venezuela?
No, we're not in a state of war in Venezuela.
Okay, the Supreme Court has described the Alien Enemies Act as a wartime power, our Supreme Court. And before now, the Alien Enemies Act was only invoked during the War of 1812, World War I, World War II, when it was used to intern thousands of innocent civilians. Are you really arguing that the President should be able to wield an internment law?
No, but we're talking about two separate things here. So you're talking about the state of Venezuela or are describing the regime.
And
we're talking about, but what the President designated.
Invoked the Alien Enemies Act.
I know, Senator, but let me be clear with you. No, but what the President was talking about are these gangs and these narco-trafficking groups that are waging war on the United States. There's no doubt. These groups have waged war on the United States. They have waged, for example, Trinidad Agua is not just a criminal gang presence in our street. It is a criminal gang directly responsible for narco-trafficking.
The Trump administration has acknowledged that the vast majority of the men it rounded up and deported to torture under this law had no criminal records whatsoever.
We didn't torture anybody.
Over 75%.
Who did we torture? We haven't tortured anybody. We've arrested people that are members of gangs and we've deported them. We don't want gang members in our country.
Have found that many of the men were here legally. If the administration is willing to lie about who it's targeting under this law, what protections do totally innocent people have against abuse? Again, I want to ask you, will you advise the President to rescind his invocation of the Wartime Alien Enemies Act?
No, of course not. I mean, these are people that are threats to the national security of the United States. But I've described this in hearings in the past, including before you guys.
So you're saying that we're at war?
We are absolutely. When it comes to narco-trafficking groups and criminal gangs that are targeting the United States for criminal activity.
We're in a state of war.
There's no doubt about the fact that we're confronting them in a war like that because they're waging war on us.
And do the Geneva Convention
They're waging war against us and they're enemy combatants as a result of it. And the fact of the matter is that we are confronting these irregular groups, and that's one of the great challenges of the new century in this hemisphere in particular, is that these non-state actors who possess state-like capabilities in terms of their weaponry pose a grave danger to the United States. I don't think any American would dispute that we have cartels that pose a threat to the national security of the United States.
With all of the other laws of when it comes to warfare. I mean, you're saying that he can invoke this wartime power.
No, I'm saying, you're asking me, I'm here to discuss foreign policy and what's in the realm of the Department of State.
Well,
I think your questions are better directed to the Department of Justice.
Enemies Act,
but I would tell you that,
which is a wartime, which is something that
yeah, but you're asking me a question that
can be invoked during wartime. It's only been invoked during the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. It's only been invoked 3 times, and this President is invoking it.
Okay, you're asking me a question about the domestic application of a law that's best directed to the Department of Justice.
It's not a complication.
Because you're asking me something to opine on something that's in the realm of the Department of Justice in terms of its domestic application. I can tell you that the United States is most certainly confronting terrorist and criminal organizations operating in our hemisphere that pose a grave danger to the United States. Anyone who believes that gangs that flood our country with fentanyl or cocaine are not threats to the United States is not living in reality and certainly does not reflect the opinion of most Americans.
The President already said that he was ready to put American troops in Venezuela again. So we're at war right now. So if things don't go well with the Chavistas you've empowered,
when did the President say he was going to put troops in Venezuela?
A military option, what is your criteria for returning to a military option and putting boots on?
Well, I don't recall the President saying he was going to put troops in Venezuela. Where did he say that?
I'm asking you, what are your...
But that's what you said. I didn't remember the President
has already said that he was ready to put American troops in Venezuela.
No, I think the President has said that he retains the right as Commander-in-Chief to protect the United States against any imminent threats. Maybe that involves troops, maybe that involves air power. We hope, but we don't anticipate that being the case in Venezuela.
I worry that you're playing fast and loose with our nation's
Well, I just gave you testimony here.
I just want to conclude by saying...
Yeah, but I just gave you testimony of how well things are moving forward, not as fast as everybody would like.
Yeah, but you also said that in 6 or 9 months, if things don't go well, you're going to have to do something else. And the President's already said that he's not ruled out the military option. And you've also just said that, yes, we are at war. The President has wartime powers.
Every president retains the power to use military to protect.
So it's reasonable for me to ask you...
And I gave you a very specific example. Every president retains the right to defend the United States against an imminent threat. Yes, if there are just give you an example, Iranian drones deployed in Venezuela that could threaten the United States, we most certainly will address that, even if it's located in Venezuela. But we hope we don't get to that point. We don't expect to get to that point.
think that
we're not trending in that direction. That's a fact. But that said, on the one
people
hand,
of America
people
are
here
worried that
unhappy
this is
with
a president
cooperating
who
with
engages
Venezuela.
in yet
On the other hand,
another
they want us to
forever
go to
war,
with
Mr.
them.
Secretary.
What's
We
that?
don't need to be in another forever war, and that is the path that we are going towards. And let me just say,
Well, how are we going towards a forever war if we're dealing with
you're not
Delcy
ruling out a
Rodriguez every
military
day?
option. You're not going to ask him to rescind his invocation of the Alien Enemies Act. That puts Americans in jeopardy. And let me just say something about the president's recent comments about NATO allies. When I served in Iraq, there were Polish forces there with us. There were British forces there with us. There were Spanish forces there with us. I personally landed in Elzi, España, which came under direct attack by insurgents. Polish troops who worked with the Illinois military, with the Illinois National Guard for 30 years, died in Afghanistan, Mr. Secretary.
All the president
so I just
wants
want
is for NATO to
is
have
that
more
our NATO
capabilities.
allies have stood beside us.
He wants our allies to
and
have more
we need to maintain the strength of that alliance.
I get it.
yield
Not
back.
all the
Your
president wants is
your
our
time's
allies.
up. Not making much progress here.
Well, let me just
Very
say, the
much.
president
Let's-
just wants our allies to have more capabilities to be involved in operations like that, God forbid, in the future if necessary.
That's not what he
an
said.
unreasonable
He said
request.
that they stayed a little behind, and they certainly did not come to our defense. And
Well, not
they
every
did.
country in Europe, not every country in NATO participated in those missions. Some did.
Denmark suffered some of the greatest military casualties.
There's no doubt that many of our allies have stepped forward and provided assistance to us, and there are many others that simply don't have the capability to do it now or in the future.
That's not what the president said.
So that's
Senator
what he
Lee,
was pointing to.
What unfolded in this exchange between Senator Tammy Duckworth and Secretary of State Marco Rubio was not just a partisan clash. It was a debate about constitutional limits, wartime authority, and how language shapes the use of power. At the center of the confrontation is the Alien Enemies Act, a statute passed in 1798 as part of the Alien and Sedition Acts. It gives the president authority to detain or remove nationals of a hostile foreign power during a declared war.